Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's CICN webinar. We will begin in just a moment. Okay, let's go ahead and begin. We've had a chance for people to join us, and a few more will trickle in. So, good afternoon. My name is Garrett Burdan. I'm with the Institute of Child Nutrition, and I'd like to welcome you to the November 2022 CICN webinar, Successful Implementation of Culturally Inclusive School Meals. This webinar is part 2 of a 2-part series. If you missed last month's webinar, introducing the topic, you can watch a recording of that webinar in iLearn. As a reminder, during today's webinar, all attendees are muted. There will be time for questions at the end of the presentation. If you have a question, please type it into the question box on your screen. It's called the Q&A box. You'll see the icon on your screen. We will try to get to as many questions as possible, but due to our time constraints, every question may not get answered during the webinar. After the webinar ends, a link to complete a short survey will appear. Please complete the evaluation survey. 24 hours after the webinar, individuals who have registered will receive a follow-up email. The email contains a recording link of this webinar available on iLearn, ICN's online learning platform, and a link to the evaluation survey in case you missed the pop-up link. ICN will send out webinar certificates within 24 hours. The ICN and USDA Food and Nutrition Service launched the Culinary Institute of Child Nutrition in 2018 to assist in meeting the unique training, technical assistance, and professional development needs of child nutrition professionals. We work to help child nutrition professionals develop goals and implement best practices to improve the culinary aspect of program operations. Please visit the Culinary Institute of Child Nutrition online for tips and strategies for preparing and serving healthy, culinary-inspired meals. Thank you again for joining today's webinar. The topics covered in today's webinar fall under key areas 1, 2, and 3, nutrition, operations, administration, and meet the USDA Professional Standards Codes 1100, 2100, 2400, and 3200. The learning objective for today's webinar is identify 2 strategies for successful implementation of new culturally inclusive meals on school menus. We're really excited to have to host this webinar today. A school menu that features culturally relevant meals accomplishes 2 things. 1, cultural and religious foodways are met. And 2, the school community is exposed to an exciting diversity of foods and flavors. So as the school-aged population becomes increasingly food savvy, culturally inclusive school meals are a win-win. On this webinar, we will be joined by leaders from school districts in California and Washington State, who will provide examples of identifying and implementing culturally inclusive meals in schools. I'll introduce our presenters in the order that they'll speak, and I'll first introduce Nicole Cadiz. Nicole Cadiz is the interim culinary manager for San Francisco Unified School District. Nicole holds a culinary degree and is a professionally trained chef with 15 years of food service experience, ranging from contract dining, for-profit, and institutional settings. Nicole manages the culinary programs at San Francisco Unified School District. Nicole conducts student taste testings, establishes good relationships with vendors, creates recipes, develops the menu, and holds training with the dining staff. We're so grateful to Nicole for joining us today. I'll next introduce Eva Yablonsky-Smith. Eva Yablonsky-Smith is the supply chain manager for Culinary Services Department at Seattle Public Schools. Eva loves being part of a team that consistently values the diverse culture and cuisines of Seattle's community members and brings such dishes and ideas to fruition. Because of this, Seattle students have access to a variety of cuisines, which we'll hear about today. Student and staff feedback has been very positive, with many expressing thanks that there are dishes on the menu that represent their culture, while others are thankful to try something new. Eva especially enjoys being part of the planning and implementation of new dishes. Eva truly enjoys learning the history behind the diverse dishes. The most rewarding part is seeing student faces as they experience cuisine from many cultures. We're very happy to have Eva with us today. Our third presenter is Semhar Kifle. Semhar Kifle is the supply chain manager for Culinary Services Department of Seattle Public Schools. She loves to serve, create, and support her district and see plans come to life. Semhar gets the opportunity to teach kitchen staff district-wide and learn from others as they explore, create, and serve culturally diverse meals. Semhar is so proud to work for a district that wants to see all cultures represented through food. That's terrific. We're so happy to have Semhar with us today. Before I invite our first speaker out, I want to launch a poll question. This is our getting to know you part of the webinar. So this is how myself and our presenters will understand who our audience is today. So the first poll question has been launched, and the question is simply, are you currently serving menu items that reflect the cultures in your community? Yes, no, or not yet, but we would like to, which may be why you're here today. So let's give you just a little bit of time to respond to this poll. And no surprise, I'm seeing, I think I can see the poll as you're answering, and maybe you can't see it quite yet, but I'm seeing a range of answers. So most of you are doing that. Some of you are not, and some of you are not yet, but you would like to. So hopefully after today's webinar, you'll have some ideas on how to go about implementing or trying out a new recipes that reflect some of the cultures that are in your community. All right, just a few more seconds and we will close the poll. So let's go ahead and close that. I think we had a pretty good turnout of voters. Great. So the results are being shared with you now. So 62% of you are currently serving menu items that reflect the cultures in your community. 8% are not. Perhaps you're meeting the needs of your community just fine, and 30% not yet, but you're interested in doing so. So I'm glad that all of you are here today to learn from our presenters. I do have one more poll, and let's go ahead to that next question. It's sort of a follow-up question to this. So poll question number 2 is, when you started, so this is assuming that you have started or you're interested in starting. So when you started offering culturally relevant meals, which of the following potential barriers did you encounter? Select all that apply. Maybe there's none. I probably should have included that as an option, that you didn't encounter any barriers, which great if that were the case for you. So the options are ingredient cost, access to ingredients, complex culinary preparation, food service staff lacking familiarity with the dish, marketing and outreach, and ultimately student acceptance. So we've had our live participants today are still answering this poll question. But again, I wanted to ask this follow-up question so that our presenters had an idea of where you as the attendee are in your experience with this topic. Because perhaps during their presentation, they'll be able to address some of these potential barriers that that you may have encountered. So we're seeing again a kind of a diverse spread of answers here. And let's go ahead and close the poll, and let's take a look at the results. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of across the board. We have roughly 40% ingredient cost, access to ingredient 45%, complex culinary preparation 30%, 34% there, 48% of food service staff lacking familiarity with the dish, 13% hitting roadblocks or barriers with marketing and outreach, and then the highest 54% student acceptance. So yes, certainly this is not without challenges, as it is with any rolling out any new menu item. So why don't we go ahead and bring out our first presenter, Nicole from San Francisco Unified School District, and she'll begin to share with us her experience in San Francisco.
Hello, good afternoon. I would like to give a brief background of what we do at San Francisco Unified School District Student Nutrition Services. So currently, San Francisco Unified School District offers the Refresh program, and we offer these at the secondary school sites only due to our kitchen equipment and facilities. Refresh is our in-house speed scratch cooking program. We began piloting 100% in-house refresh program at 4 middle schools pre-pandemic. Previously, we've had 60% made in-house and 40% of these meals are prepared by vended meals. Because of our facilities, we cannot bring in raw protein as most sites don't have the hoods to being compliant with the fire department. Though kitchen equipment vary per school site, the menus are designed to work for all sites. SFUSD also has a strict wellness policy that prohibits artificial colors, preservatives, and tropical oils that most of the prepared items or the products have. So for menu development, I create sauce recipes from scratch to streamline products to prevent bringing in different SKUs and to keep inventory at a minimal. Given the rising food costs and labor shortages, I develop recipes that are simple, authentic, a little play with cuisine fusions, while not compromising the taste and the quality of the ingredients. We've also expanded bulk service to 3 schools when their kitchens completed construction mid-school year of 21-22, and we will be transitioning to scratch cooking next year. The bulk service will eliminate food packaging and also lower some foods non-food supplies. And the scratch cooking will allow us to bring in raw products and lower our food costs as well. We've launched breakfast program last year at all 20 refresh schools, and we've expanded all 20 schools to the refresh model this school year. About 40% of student population consists of Asians. 35% of our average daily participation comes from the refresh program, and 10% comes from our mini central kitchen. Some recipes we offered are created by our very own dining staff. We conduct taste tests at various schools with the support of our food core service members, dietetic interns, and vendors as well. These are just a few highlights of the new menu that we offered for this fall. Just going to give you a little bit of background of what the recipe descriptions are and what the common ingredients are. So we eliminated our burritos and we elevated our recipes for our quesadillas. So we offer an alternate Greek chicken quesadilla with a Greek ranch dipping sauce. This will have like a diced cooked chicken breast with sliced black olives, cheese and red bell peppers, and some Greek seasoning. A take on barbecue chicken, the usual recipe with added some red onions and cheddar cheese, served with a guacamole aioli dipping sauce. And then the rest I would tackle on my next slides. So the Patty's banh mi is a classic Vietnamese sandwich served on a baguette. We partner with our local bakery, Bonami Bakery, that also serves our bagels for breakfast. So for samples, these are samples that we offered, and we just usually make a simple poster and give them some stickers for voting after they had tasted it. We also offer a Korean cheesesteak sandwich the following week on our menu cycle. This is just a play on a classic Philly cheesesteak recipe with inspired Korean bulgogi beef. We also offer plant-based menus this year. We were awarded a small micro grant from Friends of the Earth, and we used this grant to purchase supplies for recipe testing and some small wares. This is a Singaporean curry noodles served with plant-based impossible nuggets. This is just a quick recipe that offers the rice noodles with some bean sprouts, bell peppers, onions, and some Singaporean curry spices. The rice noodles are really easy to make. All you have to do is soak the rice noodles in cool water for 15 minutes and drain it. There's no cooking required. Quick and easy. As you see, one of our chefs are demonstrating how to prepare this item. We've also offered another plant-based menu for lunch. So basically the goals for this year was to offer plant-based menu 1 time a week for lunch and 1 supper entree. This is a sticky Szechuan dumpling. So we've tried creating a recipe that doesn't, for the dumpling not to get dried out. So we would bake this with the marinade, and the marinade will stick with the dumpling. So this is a dumpling from Schwan's with the edamame dumplings that is served with rice and tofu. Next, we have chicken bao. So these are Peking style marinated pulled chicken with pickled vegetables on fluffy bao buns that we easily steam. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Hello, everybody. My name is Eva Yablonsky-Smith, and I'm here from Seattle Public Schools Culinary Services Department. I'm very excited to be here and to talk to you about some of the things that we have done at Seattle Public Schools successfully while implementing culturally relevant recipes and student engagement surrounding around that. Just a little brief synopsis about our district. We serve about 118 schools, wide variety of different cultures, very diverse city. And our goal is to really make sure that we are reflecting all the different types of cuisines and diverse cuisines throughout our menu, and really aiming towards making sure that it's as authentic as it can be with the resources that we do have. A big piece of this is working with our staff and getting input from our students. Our district chef is very much involved in making sure that the recipes are as authentic as they can be, as I said. So I'm here to talk about a dish that we had rolled out last year and hopefully can roll out again this year, congee. So it's congee is a rice porridge eaten in most Asian countries. It can be eaten plain, or it's typically served with side dishes, or it can be served with ingredients such as eggs, meat, fish, seasoning, any type of flavoring, mostly savory. Yeah. So we worked with one of our kitchen managers at one of our elementary schools called Wing Elementary School. The kitchen manager wanted to be involved in implementing this recipe that she grew up with and is very near and dear to her heart. So we did a Filipino version, which is also referred to as lugao. And also we served this at a handful of our schools. Last year, we only did a small portion, about 20 schools, because we did it through our FFVP program, Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program. So the way that we rolled that out was every student in the school had access to this meal and were able to taste it and give feedback. And it was a very big success. We worked with a lot of local ingredients to source the mushrooms, the eggs, and all the vegetables that we used for it. So the students were very excited. As you can see here, we had a nice flyer that we put up, and we did a lot of marketing on that piece. And so we did this congee with or lugao, this version that we did with the adobo mushrooms, green onions, chives, and a nice fresh egg on top. And then we have it all locally sourced here, which is a really great benefit to really expose our students and staff to all the ingredients that we have access to just right in our backyard, and how we can create such great, simple, but amazing dishes, and really make sure that they're authentically rolled out. So I had a chance to speak with our kitchen manager over at Wing Luke Elementary, and she just lit up when I would speak to her. Almost you can hear her smiling through the phone when she spoke about this dish. She said that it's a real staple where she grew up. She is from Manila originally, and said that she has many fond memories of her mother preparing this luau for breakfast. She said it's the most common time to eat this dish, but it can definitely be consumed all day, every day. She described it as almost like a staple, like a chicken soup when you're not feeling well, but also something that you just have every day. It's also, like I said earlier, it's served with meats, fish, and vegetables. You can see the version that she referred to with me was that there's a large Latin influence with a lot of Filipino cuisine, due to the Philippines being ruled by Spain for about 400 years. So you'll see a lot of those flavors, like with the adobo mushrooms, coming through on this particular dish version with the recipe that she shared with us. Wing Luke has a very large, Wing Luke Elementary at Seattle Public Schools has a very large Asian population. And so she really wanted to share her recipe to the school and offer familiar cuisine to the students. A lot of students were approaching her saying that they wanted to see that reflected on the menu. And then there were other students that were curious about this dish. And so she saw a great opportunity here to use this as a chance, as a teachable moment while the kids are coming through the line. There's a lot of lessons that can be learned in that lunch line, and so she used this as a moment. She shared the recipe with our district chef, who then made sure that we were able to produce it in proper volume and roll it out at a handful of schools. Screen. So yeah, again, it was a huge success, and we do anticipate preparing it for more sites this year, and potentially putting it onto the menu for across the board, not just for our fresh fruit and vegetable program. And there's many other dishes that we anticipate rolling out, and we're very excited to continue to work with our staff. Our district chef is very open to working with all the staff and making sure that everything is authentically rolled out. And so it's real special, not only for students to see familiar cuisine that they can identify with, but for other students to be exposed to these other dishes so that they can have that experience as well. So we're very much looking forward to implementing more dishes and working with our staff and students, gaining feedback, creating committees with our staff, creating input from our parents and guardians to see what they'd like to see as well, so we can continue to hear them and then also implement that across the board. And with that being said, I'm going to pass it on to my colleague, Semhar Kifle, who also worked on rolling out some great things at Seattle Public Schools.
Hey, Simhar, if you'll just click from current slide on your main screen right there in front of you, it should get up the full slide for us. There we go.
Hi, everyone. My name is Semhar Kifle. I'm with the Seattle Public Schools Culinary Services Department. Like my colleague Eva said, we've been working together in our department to implement culturally relevant dishes, working one-on-one with both our kitchen managers as well as our district chef. We've been able to roll out things like she mentioned with the FFVP program, which is the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable program, was how we were able to roll out the kanji. And then with the Taste of SPS, Chef Emmy was very intentional about finding dishes that are important to our students of diverse backgrounds during especially certain times of year. So we've done things like different soups during like Lunar New Year, and during an Eritrean and Ethiopian fast that is very popular. It's our Lent fast that we do every year. We rolled out what's called Misir Wut in Amharic, which is Ethiopian. I am Eritrean, very similar. It's a small country right below Ethiopia, and we call that dish Adis. And that dish is what you see here. It consists of lentils. It's a popular dish mostly eaten in East African countries like Ethiopia and Eritrea. It is fully vegan. It's made with lentils and traditional spices. And I'm going to talk a little bit about those spices because they are a vital part of, you know, every dish that we eat. It's warm. It's a labor of love to create. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. Okay. So berbere. Berbere is the most common spice used in East African foods. And so just as, you know, a curry paste could be, you know, the most popularly used dish in like Indian dishes, berbere goes without saying, it's in almost every one of our dishes. So it is a spice made up of dried chilies, coriander seeds, cumin seeds, green cardamom seeds, whole cloves, fenugreek, black peppercorns, and it is the base in all of our dishes. And to get this, it takes quite a lot of work, just crushing all those seeds from, you know, the very beginning, from picking to drying the chilies in the sun. It is quite a lot of labor. So it is a very special and very used dish in our spice in our country. So when I say a labor of love, this is like literally the stories my mom would tell me. The women in this picture are crushing red chili peppers to make this. And now this is, you know, many moons before when my mom was still living back home. This is something that was done by hand. And so they would dry it, you know, in the sun, the dried chilies, and then they would have to grind it with there were no machines for them to use. So this has come a long way. This process is long, but is often prepared with the women in the family singing and celebrating as they work. It's believed that the result comes out better when done in song and dance. And so I will say everything about East African culture is doing things together, whether it be cooking or eating or preparing. There isn't a lot of doing things on your own. It's very common to go to if you came to my family's house, we'd probably have one big plate and we'd be eating together, and that's very common for us. All tasks are done together with family and neighbors. They would split the ingredients and then share the final product amongst each other. So this is very common in my country, in both Eritrean and Ethiopian culture. So the bread that we eat our Mr. What with is called injera. Injera is a flat bread, traditionally made out of 100% teff flour. Now that is something that's a little hard to get at times for some people, depending on where you're from, cost, you know, it can be difficult. But injera is traditionally made from teff flour, the world's tiniest grain and one of the earliest domesticated plants, having originated in Eritrea and Ethiopia. Its production is limited to only areas with adequate rainfall, so it is relatively expensive in most African households. As such, many will replace some of the teff contents with other flours like barley or wheat. For those who can afford it, injera is made entirely of teff flour and is in high demand, and it is 100% gluten-free. So gursha is, and so like going back to what I said about everything being together, gursha means to feed in Amharic, which is Ethiopian, and mukulas is to also in Tigrinya. So injera is commonly eaten together as a group. We sit together at a table with one large tray with a wide variety of dishes filled with rich flavors. This is often a time for storytelling while nourishing our bodies. Gursha mukulas means to feed each other. It is common for someone to serve you a delicious bite and you give them one in return. Food is a way this culture shows love. And so as you can see, we have the lentil stew in this dish. There's also a different lentil. There's a yellow lentil, like a yellow split pea. There's beets and carrots. So we do eat a wide variety of vegan dishes just year round because there is so much fasting that goes on. in the two countries. Meat is really traditionally eaten like around the holidays. So after you break a fast, like for Easter, then you would celebrate by, they would usually sacrifice a cow or a lamb or a chicken, and then once again that's consumed together and cooked together. And so there is quite a bit of togetherness with this dish. So just before I get into the next slide, what made me want to do this dish is Chef Emmy came to me and said, is there anything that you could think of that we could do as part of the Taste of SPS? And I got excited because I said, wow, I don't know if we can make this happen, but it'd be really cool to see Injera on the map. And she was like, well, why couldn't we? And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, it just seems like so many meals and, who's going to make it? And she's like, you are. And I said, okay. So Chef Patrick actually came down and we did a test recipe in our central kitchen here at Seattle Public Schools. And it was, everyone seemed to like it. It actually wasn't as difficult as we thought. We went to some local African markets here ahead of time and were able to source ingredients. So we were able to use all local vendors. Yeah, and it was very well received. And so didn't think that I would see this happen and for it to come into total fruition. We even talked about serving this with pita bread. And then I said, scratch it. If we can't do it all the way, I don't want to do it at all. So we were able to source the injera and to have that served. And so this was in our, we have what's called pre-packed trays for some of our smaller schools. So we were able to serve this across our district, which was really exciting for me just to see it be served. I went out to some schools and got to see the kids eating it and was able to answer questions, and that was really exciting for me because coming home after school this is something that I would walk into to eat. This is not something that I would ever think I could walk into my lunchroom cafeteria and find for lunch. So very exciting. And so as far as implementing this, I just kind of made a little flyer and just wanted to give people some background on it, and just kind of told them about the bread, because I know the bread can be, it is a spongy sour bread, but eaten with the spices and the onion and the garlic of the lentil stew and the other dishes, it really does work well together. And so I just really wanted to also, because I had a lot of staff members asking about utensils. And so I did want to make it, I wanted it to be fun for them, but also to, in our culture, we do eat with our hands. So I said, injera isn't just a flat bread, it's also an eating utensil. Tear a piece of the bread and dig into this delicious, vibrant stew. And so this is a picture of collard greens on the side, which is another dish that we do that hopefully we'll do next. So I'm very excited to continue to come up with dishes, and I'm so proud to work with a department that allows us to be creative and we find ways to represent our students, because representation matters. And so it was really exciting to see kids see this and say, oh my God, I know what that is. So thank you. Back to Chef Garrett.
Excellent. Simhar, thank you so much for sharing your story. I mean, the information that you just finished sharing was so inspiring, and the food was just looked so amazing. And to hear the background, the cultural background, and the story about when the spices are being ground. I tried to jot down a note. I think I missed that part, but you mentioned something about singing all the while is a way to make the work go by, but also, I can't remember exactly what you said, but it was so well put, like adds love into the process or something along those lines.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, perfect.
Oh, yeah. Actually, it's very traditional in our culture, whether we're having weddings or baptisms or any kind of celebration, the women of the family typically come together and sing and dance as they cook. And that is just, they have a blast doing that. And so it's just a traditional thing that, when we have graduation parties, I'd come into my mom's house and they're cooking onions and there's dancing. And that's very common because they're probably cooking, 50 pounds of onions because it takes a lot. But
Yeah,
yeah, but that's my people.
I love that. I love hearing those stories. All right, so as just to let the attendees know that we're going to move into the Q&A portion. I had my slide up, but then I took it down so that we can be in gallery mode for everyone to see each other. So we'll go ahead and do the Q&A portion. It'll also be a little bit like a panel discussion. So I have some questions for you before we get into some of the questions that have been submitted by our attendees. So I'll start with Nicole. Nicole, you shared some amazing looking menu items that reflected the cultures in your community. I wanted to know if you could elaborate a little bit more on Patty's banh mi, and if there's a story behind the banh mi. And forgive me if I missed it, but tell me about who Patty is, and then how that process, how the banh mi came to be on the menu.
Okay, so all right. So Patty's our very own dining staff. She works at our central kitchen, and she started kind of just doing it as a chef's choice special one day, and then everyone loved it. So then we just incorporated to our refresh menu, and it's really getting a lot of praise and attention because it's just so authentic. It's very simple to prepare, and the kids are just loving it. I mean, um, we have a lot of parents and teachers that have uh, commented on how authentic and how their kids are not even bringing lunch anymore, that they're just happy to be able to get the refresh menu items from their perspective schools.
That's great. I mean, it's a dream to know that kids are opting in on the meals served at school. And I think that's really terrific. Also, on the chicken bao and the steamed bun, that just looked so amazing. How often do you have that on the menu, or is it like a special that you do just once or twice a year?
So we currently have a 2-week cycle menu, and this is
Mhm.
offered on week 1 every Friday. So this is going up against a pizza, which is also very popular. But
Mhm.
right now it's about a split vote because they can get pizza any other day, but then the bao is only offered technically twice a month because it's we offered on week 1 on a 2-week
Okay.
cycle menu.
Okay. And this may be by design, but you offer the bao bun on a day where you have a very high participation item like pizza. Was that intentional so that you don't have to, just to kind of control how many portions of the bao bun you'd have to prepare?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
We just designed the menu to have like, let's say, let's say you have a rice dish with, let's say, a hot dog. So then it won't be both bread. So you'll have a choice of either rice or something bread based or a pasta base. I think it just kind of played out that way when we designed the menu and where to juggle and jigsaw to be able to offer a different variety throughout the week.
Great. It sounds amazing. And the Singapore curry noodles, you showed us a picture of the rice noodles that are used for that just require a hot water soak. Are you using those noodles in any other dishes, or is it just for the Singapore curry noodle at this
Currently,
time?
we are only using that for that particular recipe.
Okay.
We have some items like, let's say, the baguettes, right? We would use
Mhm.
it for the banh mi for week 1.
Mhm.
Week 2, we would offer the Korean cheesesteak. So it will be offered served in the same baguette, just a different recipe. We also use a vegetable blend from Simplot, roasted bell peppers and onions that we use at that cheesesteak that we
Mhm.
also use at the Singaporean curry rice noodles recipe. So that's like trying to streamline the products and using the same instead of bringing a different item for those 2 recipes.
Yeah, definitely. You want to get that cross utilization in on some of those items. So thank you for sharing that. It helps to hear from an operations perspective, like how ingredients and items are being cross utilized. So I think that can inspire a lot of people. Um, let's see. I'm going to shift gears to Eva. I wanted to know if you could elaborate a little bit more on the kanji dish that you shared about, and kind of the background on, and you may have shared this and I missed it, so forgive me. But if you could share more about the background and how that dish came to be on the menu, and if you were making, I think one of the questions in Q&A was if the congee was, the porridge was cooked from scratch or if that was purchased. So if you could remind us of some of those details.
Yeah, so the congee, or this version lugao, was made from scratch at our central kitchen by our central kitchen staff, and then sent out to a handful of sites. So the how it came up was that the kitchen manager had reached out and wanted to test this out on the students. And so that's why we started with implementing it through our FFVP, Fresh Fruit Vegetable Program, to start with a smaller group of schools to see how it went, just testing out and see a couple questions in there about, how did you start? Was it all schools? Was it a little? So we started with about 16 to 20 schools to test it out. And then therefore we can see, the reaction and how it's worked out. Was it successful? And then we can kind of learn from that. And then we can do it on a larger scale and then go to more schools with it. Yeah, but
That's great.
The fresh eggs, they were prepared on site by our kitchen staff. So we did get some locally sourced eggs from a local farm here, and then they were prepared on site fresh by our kitchen managers and kitchen staff out there at the schools. And then the rice porridge that was prepared from scratch by our central kitchen staff members.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And could you the eggs were whole, intact, with the yolk kind of maybe still runny, or ideally still a little bit runny, I think it looked like in the picture. Can you describe how you prepared the eggs whole like that
Oh yeah,
in
so
quantity?
definitely. So you take a sheet pan, generously spray it with some pan spray, and then you crack your eggs on the sheet pan. And then you can just do it in the oven with a low fan. Make sure the fan's on low, or else you're gonna have eggs all over. And then you can just, essentially bake it that way until you have the right, medium consistency that you like. It really having that egg yolk in there really creates even more creaminess. And yeah, so that's how we did it at our sites. They were sent, whole eggs on flats, and then they cracked them on the generously sprayed sheet pan and baked them in the ovens, because we don't have open ranges at our sites. So that was the way that we were able to get that medium done egg.
Thank you for describing that. I have never done that myself in quantity, but it does seem like it could be fairly simple. It might take a few test runs for sure. But I think that could be, one takeaway from this webinar is at least, how to do the eggs whole, intact like that.
Oh yeah.
So
awesome.
yeah, so thank you for describing. I could see actually that being used like, did one of you also share, are any of you doing like bibimbap, the Korean rice dish with egg? So no one's doing that currently. So you could do the same egg preparation method to add that to a bibimbap rice.
Yeah. You can do it also with, a scrambled egg, like a liquid egg for your breakfast sandwiches. You can do it on your sheet pan, and then that way you can cut it to fit onto your English muffin or biscuit, whatever type of bread you have, or just a nice omelet. So you can prepare that way as well. So there's a lot of different ways you can work with it. Just really knowing your hot spots in the oven and your fans.
Yeah. That is a good point. The hot spots, and to watch out for the fans. Great. Okay. So I have another question for Simhar. You shared with us that the injera, the flatbread, if I'm pronouncing that right?
Yeah,
okay.
You did good. Yeah.
Thank you. Was sourced locally, right? You found an outside source for that bread to bring in, is that right? Okay.
Yeah, so the injera making process is a process. It's probably about a 3 to 5 day process. Like if my mom starts it on a Monday, I can expect to not see any product until like Saturday morning when she is off for the weekend, because there's, you have to let you soak the teff flour, then there's parts that you have to boil extra water, add to it, take off the top, it'll separate. And so you take that liquid off the top, and it's a process that you repeat about 3 or 4 times before you can actually get a flat pan and make a circle and make the bread. So it's not something that I felt confident in heading here at the school district, just because it's a lot. I mean, it's a lot of work. It takes days, and I mean that to make that many pieces would have taken, it would have taken an army. That's like when usually when we have weddings and such, my mom and her friends will have, it'll be like 20 or 30 ladies singing, dancing, and doing it. So the work is like, but for for us doing it, it would be a lot. So we were able to just there's like African markets all over Seattle.
Okay.
So it was very accessible. So we also got the bread butter spice there. We got the lentils there, some other spices that we wanted. But yeah, we were able to just go to one market and, support a local vendor while also, and they made it fresh for our program.
That's great. It's a really good example of just how to, take something that you want to do. In this case, for you, you're really inspired to make this happen, and you were like, no, we're not going to just use a pita. If that's our option, we're not going to do it at all. So I can appreciate you being, you drawing that line in the sand, like, we're going to do this right if we're going to do it. So well done.
Yeah,
you also, during
you.
your presentation, shared, I think you said something along the lines of spices are a vital part of every dish that you create, and especially in the Monsieur Wote, the warm spices and the blend of spices that are in that they're so unique to that dish and so critical.
They are, yeah. You really can't skip out on some dishes. I know, like, even if you don't like spice, you can just use a little bit, but you really do need those flavors from the fenugreek and the cardamom and all those flavors that are blended in that verbena spice in order to make the dish what it is. Or else, it's kind of just lentils, and I mean, it still has onions, garlic, tomato, so there is still flavor there. But I would say traditionally, if you want something with like less spice, we would still probably put a jalapeno or something just for a little. It really does just balance out the flavors, especially with the sourdough bread. So, but the barbacoa is very vital. It's in every dish.
Great. Well, I know that there's been some questions come through on the Q&A. I think many have been answered by text, but I do want to ask kind of general questions from that list. So this is to all three of you. When you're serving some of these culturally inclusive or culturally relevant dishes that include a grain component like the rice noodle or the bao bun or the injera bread, which would, in our regulation world, we would hope that the grain credits toward a whole grain item. Sometimes it doesn't. And how do you as operators kind of get around that? If you're serving a grain that's doesn't credit as whole grain, but you still want to have this on the menu, how do you get by that?
So for us, we use the remaining 20% of the less of the grains, right? So the current rule is that 80% of your menu items that are prepared have to be whole grain, right? That meets whole grain rich. And then the remaining 20% can be these white options, right? Like, let's say, for instance, we've tried brown rice, right? To meet the whole grain, but it's really not as culturally accepted to be able to serve an authentic dish as like an item that uses a white rice. So we found out that by research, there's, with, like, let's say, flavor and preparation and some research about, like, with how our participation would accept it, it's a lot of waste, actually. So we rather portion it out to our remaining 20% to meet the other 80% that are whole grain rich.
Great, thank you. And does that sound similar to what you would do in Seattle, Samhar, Eva?
Yeah, there's ways to make up for it. I mean, in the case of the teff flour, that would be considered whole grain. However, if someone was, if it just wasn't not everything's for everyone, so we could offer it with a roll as well, and they could eat it. They could still eat the Mr. Wote with a roll. That is something that we do at home as well, so it's not, completely taking away from it. So I think there's ways to still meet that grain requirement that way.
Yeah, good. So not to worry for those of you, those are live attendees who have that question. There's ways that you can make that happen. one of the questions here is directly for the Seattle team. It says, could the Seattle team talk about what your student engagement looks like and which grade levels, how often, how feedback is incorporated, et cetera? Do one of you want to take that?
Yeah, so our student engagement when we're rolling out, for example, on the FFVP menu or the taste of SPS, we have selected a small group of schools, all different grade levels and all throughout the region. So we can get a variety of palettes, a variety of access, and really exposed to different age groups throughout the city. So our city stretches pretty far from all different regions. And so we're intentional each month with our taste of SPS menu to select a group of K-5, K through 12 schools all throughout the region so that everyone in each region, all different age groups, has a chance to try these items. And that goes for both our FFVP and our Taste of SPS menu items.
Awesome. Nicole, do you want to address the same question for San Francisco? Like, what does your student engagement look like?
We, before landing it in the menu, we would sample at various locations, for different demographics and sample it that way. If if we see success and how to measure the success and be able to offer it, we would then maybe so it will land on a seasonal a seasonal rotating menu, and we might make edits during the middle of that menu cycle. Let's say from fall, we would do it in August, so we might do some minor edits in October, November to meet those suggestions and comments, and then we would do another menu cycle during the spring.
Great. So one less of a question, but more of a comment, but I think it's worth sharing. One of our live attendees says the connection between family, culture, and food so strongly resonates with me, and I'm sure with the kiddos too. And so for the three of you, when you get to go out to the schools on these days, are you seeing that kind of everything's coming full circle in the students, their experience with the food and with the culture? Are you seeing signs of enriching lives?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say there's been tons of positive feedback just from the students. That's one thing that we're very intentional of doing. If we're rolling something out, we like to go out and see it, we'll try to pick a couple of schools, but sometimes with, getting from one to another may not work out, but we'll at least get to one between the 5 of us and really just be there to support it, right? Because if the kitchen manager isn't as familiar, although we might send information, it may not be received as well with the students, right? Because if you're just saying, oh, here's this African dish versus me coming and saying, this is from my country, it tastes like this, you should try it. You know what? I'll be back tomorrow, let me know how you like it. And really just getting that conversation going with them, I think is really important. But yeah, I think we've had great feedback from families, students, even our kitchen staff, just letting us know, like, these kids are excited about seeing all these different items.
Yeah, and I will say we do a lot of community outreach and work with a variety of diverse community groups, like prior to rolling out different menu items from different cultures. And then also the student engagement, what I've seen going out there when we are rolling out these dishes is a variety of reactions. So there's students that are very excited for something that's familiar and it's like very personal to them to see this and to see it being done the right way, in their words. And then to see, on the other hand, students that are excited to try something new, or maybe thought that this initially would be something that they wouldn't have ever tried if they didn't have access to this. And so by us rolling it out has given an opportunity for them to open their eyes to explore other, culinary treats.
Yeah. Nicole, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, we also have, like, let's say, student bodies, let's say in school, let's say we have a school food advisory that's really well spoken, and we would, they would kind of be my taste testers. Like every month they would meet, and then I would introduce new items that I want to put for the next following menu. And there's like that's a particular school food advisory that represents different high schools. So they're very food savvy. They really know what the trends are and what they want to see in the menu. And we would do surveys as well during lunch. We always have like a continuous improvement project that we would go at sites, and we would measure our successes and try to see what areas of improvement we need to keep on developing.
Yeah. I so appreciate all of the stories that the three of you have shared today, your best practices that you've shared, certainly a lot of great key takeaways, including engaging with students and doing so early, and making sure that you share the story behind the food, not just introduce the food as a sample, but actually give some history, some information, for a successful rollout of something like a culturally relevant new menu item. So thank you so much for sharing your examples. I'm going to move on into the announcements portion of the webinar, and then I'll conclude in just a few minutes. So before I do that, is there anything any of you felt like you hadn't shared yet and you want to have the chance to share? Okay, sounds good. Let me go ahead and share my screen for the last few slides. So we're done with our question and answer portion. Save the date for our next webinar on Thursday, January the 5th. We typically are on the first Thursday of the month. There will be no webinar in December. We're going to take a little break and do some evaluating of our webinar program. So join us in the new year. And by the way, that's supposed to be Thursday, January 5th, 2023. My apologies. I did not change the year. So apologies there. So we'll see you in January. Also, we have some exciting news if you didn't know already. We have our brand new child nutrition leadership site that's live now on our website, and you can find a ton of resources there to help you become a better manager. So make sure you check out some of the job aids that are on that website. And there's also an opportunity to have live chat with some of our education and training specialists on staff. So check out that website to learn more about the child nutrition leadership site. Also, if you're looking for ways and for strategies and techniques to reduce the sodium on your menus, look at the resources that are on our Shaking It Up website. So it's the icn.org/shaking-it-up. There's some really great worksheets and tools on that website for reducing sodium while increasing flavor. The Child Nutrition Sharing site and the Child Nutrition Recipe Box are both housed on our website at theicn.org. So make sure you check those out. The Child Nutrition Recipe Box is where you'll find USDA recipes for schools. And the Child Nutrition Sharing site is an incredible resource where school districts from around the country share some of their training resources with you. So you can go on there and see if there's anything that's useful to you and your training needs before creating something on your own. So be sure to check those two websites out. We also have recipes available in the Child Nutrition Recipe Box available in Spanish. So make sure you take a look at those if you have a need. And then finally, I mentioned iLearn previously, but iLearn provides the self-paced free online learning for child nutrition professionals, including our past CICN and STAR webinars. So if you need to do any continuing education, you can use any of your devices to access iLearn anywhere, anytime, and make sure that you sign up, establish an account, and it will track all of the learning that you do on iLearn through the ICN. Finally, I hope that you're following us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest, in addition to LinkedIn, which isn't featured here. But follow us on social media to stay on top of everything that we have going on. And I would finally like to thank Nicole, Simhar, and Eva for sharing their expertise with us today. You shared a lot of really great information, and I'll thank all of you for joining us today. This concludes today's webinar. Have a good day.